The stars above Earth had always been silent, but silence does not mean peace. For years, humanity believed they were too small to matter in the endless galaxy. Their technology was young, their fleets scattered, and their world still healing from its own mistakes. Yet, without warning, the silence of the night sky broke. The first attack came swift, silent, and merciless. The galaxy had finally taken notice of humanity. Not because humans were powerful, but because they were feared. Whispers had traveled across alien empires, speaking of a dangerous species that had survived countless natural disasters, endless wars, and their own harsh world. Many empires argued whether to leave humans alone, but fear won the vote. They chose to strike first, to erase the risk before it grew. One evening, when cities glowed on Earth's surface and families lived ordinary lives, the sky turned red. Massive alien warships entered orbit, blotting out the stars. They did not send words of peace. They did not give warnings. Energy beams rained down, destroying satellites, burning defense stations, and shaking the ground. Humanity's leaders realized with horror that this was not a test. It was extermination. At first, panic spread across Earth. Communication lines screamed with desperate voices. Soldiers scrambled to their stations. Civilians rushed into shelters. It felt impossible to fight back. The alien fleets were larger, older, more advanced. They had weapons that melted steel in seconds, and shields that absorbed every missile. For the first time in centuries, Earth trembled not from its own conflicts, but from an enemy far beyond its world. Yet, even in fear, humans reacted with something the galaxy had not expected: defiance. Instead of surrendering, they fought with everything they had. Fleets launched into the void, outnumbered 100 to 1. Small fighters darted between giant warships, their pilots refusing to retreat. Ground forces resisted every drop of alien troops, turning burning cities into fortresses. Humanity was not fighting for conquest. They were fighting because they had no other choice. Among the chaos, strange things began to happen. Alien generals reported that humans fought differently than any other species they had faced. A single human soldier would stand against squads, refusing to fall. Pilots whose ships were torn apart would still aim their burning wrecks toward enemy vessels, turning their final breath into a weapon. Where most species would surrender, humans only grew more dangerous. The invaders called humans unpredictable. They called them reckless. But in truth, it was something else. It was survival. Humanity had been born on a death world, where storms, predators, and starvation were constant threats. Every human carried generations of struggle in their blood. And now, that ancient instinct roared awake. The first battles were brutal. Entire cities were lost, fleets shattered, and millions perished. But even as the galaxy's combined armies struck harder, humans adapted faster. Every loss taught them something new. Every destroyed fleet gave birth to new strategies. Engineers worked without rest, turning broken alien tech into weapons of their own. Within weeks, human ships began appearing with stolen alien shields, hacked alien drones, and weapons redesigned with terrifying creativity. Alien commanders had expected a short campaign. They believed humans would collapse under the sheer weight of superior firepower. Instead, every battle dragged longer, bloodier, and more costly. What was meant to be extermination was turning into humiliation on the ground. Alien soldiers faced something even worse than human weapons. They faced human willpower. Villages that had no military still resisted. Farmers picked up broken weapons. Children carried messages through burning ruins. Even when entire regions were taken, rebellion erupted again within days. The galaxy had thought humanity weak. What they found was a species that would rather burn with its world than kneel. One alien admiral, watching the reports of countless battles, whispered to his officers that they had made a mistake. "This is not war," he said. "This is awakening. We thought we were crushing insects, but we have woken predators. And he was right. Humanity had only begun to rise out in the ruins of the first strikes. A new kind of unity spread across Earth. Nations that once distrusted each other now fought side by side. Soldiers spoke different languages but carried the same determination. Humanity was no longer divided. The enemy had given them one gift without realizing its purpose. The galaxy had attacked to end a threat. Instead, they had created one dot as dawn rose over Earth after the first month of war. Human fleets stood scarred, but not broken. Factories glowed with endless production. Recruits filled training camps faster than ships could carry them. Engineers worked day and night to rebuild, to adapt, to prepare. The galaxy believed victory was certain. But for the first time, they hesitated. Reports spread of human soldiers fighting with broken bodies, pilots who laughed as they rammed their enemies, and a species that refused to die quietly. It was then the galaxy began to understand the truth. The real war had only just begun. The galaxy had not expected resistance to last this long. By their calculations, Earth should have fallen within days. Entire species far older and more powerful had bent under their fleets. Yet humanity did not fall. Every human death seemed to fuel another act of defiance. Every destroyed city only sharpened their will. Alien war councils gathered in frustration. Admirals demanded more ships. Generals demanded harsher measures. They believed that if they struck harder, humans would finally break. And so they increased their attacks. But this only made things worse. The more the galaxy pressed, the more unpredictable humanity became. When cities were bombarded, survivors rebuilt underground bunkers and launched raids from hidden tunnels. When fleets blocked trade, humans built their own factories from scraps and raw minerals. Even without resources, humans created weapons out of what little they had. The galaxy saw this not as desperation, but as madness. To humans, it was survival. One battle became legendary across the stars. Over the skies of Mars, alien warships encircled the human colony. They outnumbered the defenders 20-1. The aliens demanded surrender. Instead, the humans responded with laughter over the coms. Their fleets surged forward, breaking into smaller groups, each one targeting weak points in the massive alien formation. The aliens destroyed half the defenders in minutes. But then something terrifying happened. The human commander ordered the surviving ships to ram. Dozens of flaming wrecks hurled themselves into the enemy, tearing apart vessels far larger. Mars was saved that day, but not because humanity had superior strength. It was because humanity had no fear of sacrifice. The galaxy began to whisper of a new name for Earth: Death World. It was not only the harsh environment of their home, but the nature of its people. Humans did not just endure. They adapted faster than any other known race. They learned enemy tactics after a single defeat. They turned captured weapons against their creators. What should have been weaknesses became strengths. In one instance, alien ground troops occupied a city on Earth, confident the battle was over. But when night came, strange things happened. Civilians who had hidden emerged with traps, fire, and stolen rifles. They attacked in waves, never stopping, never resting. By morning, the aliens had retreated, chased out by untrained civilians who refused to bow. The galaxy could not understand such behavior. To them, war was fought only by soldiers. To humans, survival was everyone's duty. Still, the galaxy refused to admit failure. They sent larger fleets, stronger weapons, and more ruthless leaders. But every victory cost them more than it gave. For every human city burned, 3 alien cruisers were lost. For every region taken, rebellion followed within days. The galaxy had underestimated not just humanity's strength, but their unity. Before the war, Earth had been divided. Nations had argued, fought, and mistrusted each other. But under the threat of extinction, those lines vanished. Soldiers of different flags fought side by side. Engineers from rival nations built weapons together. For the first time in history, humanity was truly one. And unity was a weapon the galaxy had not prepared for. One alien admiral sent a warning to his council. If we continue, we will not destroy them. We will forge them into something stronger. We will make them into the very monster we feared. His words were ignored. Pride blinded the galaxy. They could not imagine that a young species, barely into the stars, could ever stand against the might of ancient empires. But the galaxy was wrong. In hidden research stations across Earth, scientists worked tirelessly. They studied alien wreckage, learning secrets of faster engines, stronger shields, and weapons that once seemed impossible. Human pilots tested dangerous new designs, often dying in the process, but leaving behind valuable knowledge. Within months, human fleets carried weapons that rivaled the enemy. Some even surpassed them. What shocked the galaxy most was not the technology itself, but how quickly humans mastered it. Where other species took centuries to develop, humans advanced in months. It was as if their survival instinct burned so fiercely that it bent time itself. The galaxy began to hesitate. Victories were no longer easy. Every battle was paid in blood and steel. Entire fleets vanished against human defenses. The cost of war grew unbearable, and yet humans were only growing stronger. On the front lines, alien soldiers spoke of humans with fear. They told stories of men and women who fought with broken bones, who laughed in the face of death, who charged into fire with nothing but blades when their weapons failed. These stories spread faster than truth, becoming legends. And legends are often more dangerous than facts. For the first time, the galaxy felt fear, not fear of human weapons, but of human will. They realized the war was no longer about survival of one planet. It was about survival of their empires. The galaxy had tried to crush a spark. Instead, they had ignited a fire. The galaxy's leaders had grown restless. What was supposed to be a swift extermination had turned into a grinding war. Resources were draining, fleets were disappearing, and soldiers whispered of nightmares. Called humans, the councils of great empires gathered in their glittering halls, debating how such a young race could resist them. Many believed Earth must have hidden allies. Others claimed humans had discovered forbidden technologies. Few dared to admit the truth, that the galaxy had underestimated a species unlike any other. On Earth, the war had carved scars deeper than any history before it. Entire cities lay in ruins, oceans boiled from orbital strikes, and skies burned with falling debris. Yet amidst the destruction, humanity did not collapse. In fact, something unexpected was happening. Humanity was becoming more dangerous with every passing day. Factories, once built for civilian life, were now dedicated to war. Engineers who had designed machines for farming or transport were now building weapons from scraps of alien steel. Children grew up listening not to stories of peace, but to tales of courage, sacrifice, and survival. Humanity was being reshaped by the fire of war, and the galaxy had lit the flame dot in one of the largest battles above Saturn. The aliens sent a fleet so massive it blotted out the planet's rings. Their goal was to end humanity's resistance in one decisive strike. The human defenders were outnumbered 100-1. Every alien admiral believed victory was certain. But the humans had learned too much to fight as before. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, the human fleets vanished into the rings of Saturn. Using the dense rocks and ice as cover, they turned the battlefield into a trap. The alien ships advanced, firing blindly into the rings. That was when the humans struck. Small fighters darted from the shadows, planting explosives, tearing into exposed engines, and vanishing back into the icy cover. Battleships emerged suddenly, firing in coordinated waves before disappearing again. For hours the aliens struggled, unable to pin down an enemy that refused to fight by their rules. By the end of the battle, half the alien fleet was destroyed, while humans lost only a fraction of their smaller force. It was a victory no one in the galaxy thought possible. This battle spread across the stars like wildfire. For the first time, alien civilians questioned their leaders. If humans could win against impossible odds, what else could they do? Fear began to infect not just soldiers, but entire empires. Humanity's reputation grew. They were no longer seen as primitive. They were called predators, survivors, even monsters. Yet to themselves, humans were not monsters, they were simply fighting to live. And in that fight, they were willing to do what others would never imagine. On the ground, alien troops faced horrors they had never known. In one occupied city, human resistance fighters dug through rubble to create hidden tunnels. At night, they would rise like ghosts, striking with knives, explosives, or even bare hands. Entire alien patrols vanished without a trace. To the aliens, it seemed as though the very shadows of Earth had turned against them. What unnerved the invaders most was the human spirit. They had expected a broken, fearful species. Instead, they found people who smiled in the face of death. Soldiers painted symbols of unity on their armor. Pilots named their ships after fallen comrades, turning grief into vengeance. Even in the darkest hours, humans carried hope, and that hope was more dangerous than any weapon. As the war dragged on, humans began to move beyond survival. They started to strike back. Raids deep into alien space crippled supply lines. Human fleets no longer waited for attacks. They launched their own. Worlds far from Earth, once safe under alien control, now trembled at the sight of human ships emerging from the void. Alien leaders who had once laughed at the idea of human power now stared at their maps in silence. The war was spreading beyond Earth, and they were losing ground. What was meant to be extermination had become a war of survival for both sides. In secret meetings, some alien commanders spoke of peace. They whispered that continuing the war would only create something far worse than humanity already was. But the pride of the galaxy was too strong. They could not admit defeat. They could not surrender to a race they had once called weak, and so the war raged on. But deep within humanity, something even greater was awakening. Leaders no longer spoke of defense alone. They spoke of destiny. They believed humanity was not only fighting to survive, but to claim its place among the stars. For the first time, humans looked beyond Earth, not as explorers, but as warriors, ready to carve their future. The galaxy had tried to defeat humanity. Instead, they had forged a weapon, and that weapon was still sharpening. The war had already lasted longer than anyone believed possible. Whole fleets of the galaxy's greatest empires had been lost to battles they thought could never be lost. Yet Earth still stood. Humanity, scarred but unbroken, had begun to change the rhythm of the war. What was once a desperate defense had turned into a steady advance. The hunters of the galaxy had become the hunted. Humanity's fleets were no longer just defending their skies. They pushed outward into enemy-controlled systems. Their ships were smaller, but faster, armed with weapons built from a mix of human ingenuity and stolen alien technology. Every battle tested new strategies. Every failure was turned into a future victory. The galaxy had relied on age-old tactics, but humans fought as if rules had never existed. One of the first great counterstrikes came in the Varian sector. It was a cluster of supply worlds feeding alien fleets. The aliens never believed humans would dare to attack so far from home. Yet one night, without warning, human warships tore through their defenses. They hit factories, shipyards, and supply convoys in brutal waves. The battles were short, but merciless. When the humans withdrew, entire sectors lay burning, and thousands of alien soldiers were stranded without food or weapons. The news of these attacks spread across the galaxy. To many species, it seemed impossible. To the humans, it was only the beginning. They were learning that the galaxy was not invincible. For centuries, countless empires had ruled through fear and tradition. Now those empires faced a race that did not fear and did not care for tradition. Alien civilians began to whisper new words. They called humanity the unbroken. They called them the fire that spreads. And some even began to question if their own leaders had doomed them by provoking this war. Meanwhile, on Earth, the people endured. Entire cities had been destroyed, oceans poisoned, and skies filled with smoke. But instead of breaking, humanity turned their pain into strength. Music, stories, and art began to carry themes of defiance and unity. Even in the ruins, families lit candles, teaching their children not to surrender. What the galaxy did not understand was that war was no longer just fought with ships and soldiers. It was fought with spirit. Alien commanders tried to adapt. They ordered harsher measures, burning entire regions, hoping to terrify humanity into silence. But the effect was the opposite. For every atrocity, human resistance grew fiercer. For every city leveled, 10 more rose in defiance. The galaxy was feeding the very fire it wished to extinguish. A famous battle soon came to be known as the Siege of Lornes. It was not fought on Earth, but on an alien world deep in enemy space. Humans had landed secretly, guided by stolen star maps. Their goal was simple: destroy the factories that built the alien fleets. For months, a handful of human soldiers fought against thousands. They lived underground, striking only when least expected, vanishing back into tunnels and shadows. The aliens mocked them at first, calling them vermin. But over time, fear replaced mockery. When the factories finally exploded in fire, sending shockwaves across the planet, the galaxy realized something terrible. Humanity was no longer defending, they were conquering. Alien war councils grew desperate. Some argued for total destruction of Earth, even if it meant turning the planet into glass. Others argued for peace, fearing that every day of war only made humans stronger. But the councils could not agree. Pride and fear clashed until no decision was made at all. And while they hesitated, humanity grew sharper, faster, and bolder. Human scientists worked day and night, pushing limits never seen before. They built ships with hybrid drives, mixing alien technology with human designs. They created weapons that pierced shields once thought impenetrable. Pilots trained in brutal conditions, testing their limits again and again. The more the galaxy fought them, the stronger humanity became. One alien chronicler wrote, "We came to destroy a seed. Instead, we watered it. Now it grows into a forest we cannot cut down." His words were banned, but they spread anyway, whispered in the shadows of every empire. By now, even alien soldiers had changed the way they fought. When ordered to face humans, many trembled, some deserted. Others fought with fear heavy in their hearts. They knew humans were not stronger in body or technology, but they carried something no empire could match: the will to never stop. In every system humans touched, they left behind not just victories, but symbols. Wrecked alien ships drifting in orbit, banners painted on ruins, messages broadcast across the stars: "We are still here." The galaxy had thought this war would end quickly. Now it began to realize the truth. The war was no longer about ending humanity. It was about surviving humanity. The empires had turned against one small world, believing it would be easy prey. But they had awakened something far greater. Humanity was not just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for the right to exist among the stars. And nothing would stop them. The galaxy had tried to defeat humanity. But with every battle, every loss, and every sacrifice, humanity was teaching the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The galaxy's pride was beginning to crack. For so long, its empires had stood as giants, unchallenged across the stars. But the war with humanity had changed everything. Fleets that once commanded fear now returned broken. Worlds that had never known rebellion now trembled at the whisper of human strikes. And in the great halls of alien councils, silence grew heavier with every report of defeat. What had started as extermination had turned into humiliation. The cost of the war was becoming unbearable. Resources drained faster than they could be replaced. Soldiers grew restless, morale sinking lower with every human victory. Supply lines collapsed under constant raids. Even the strongest fleets struggled to keep order. The galaxy had thrown its strength at humanity, but the harder it struck, the harder humanity struck back. In the shadows, cracks spread between the empires themselves. Once united in the promise of destroying Earth, they now blamed each other for failure. Some accused rivals of holding back, of letting others pay the price in blood. Others whispered that humanity was too dangerous to fight, that the war should never have begun. What had once been a united front was becoming divided by fear. Meanwhile, humanity continued to grow sharper. Every new ship carried improvements. Every new soldier was trained with lessons carved from battle. Their commanders were young but ruthless, men and women forged in the fire of a war they never asked for. What the galaxy did not see was that humanity was no longer fighting for survival alone. They were fighting to prove they belonged among the stars. One of the turning points came when humans captured an alien battleship intact. Instead of destroying it, engineers swarmed it like ants. Within weeks, they had pulled it apart, learned its secrets, and rebuilt it into something new. The ship was faster, deadlier, and carried weapons even the aliens had not dared to design. When it entered battle under a human flag, alien soldiers panicked at the sight. It was no longer their weapon. It was a symbol of how fast humanity could adapt, and how nothing they made could not be turned against them. Alien leaders realized they had unleashed a danger greater than they imagined. Humanity was not just resisting. They were learning to surpass. The empires whispered among themselves, if humanity survived this war, they would not only be equal to the galaxy, they would be stronger. And yet, despite this knowledge, pride kept them from stopping. To end the war now would mean admitting failure, but some began to doubt. In secret chambers, alien voices whispered of peace. There were governors who had seen their worlds burned by human raids and no longer wanted to fight. There were soldiers who had looked into human eyes and seen something they could not name, something more terrifying than hatred, something deeper than vengeance. It was determination. Stories spread through alien ranks, stories so unbelievable they sounded like myths. Tales of human soldiers walking through fire, refusing to fall even when riddled with wounds. Tales of pilots who fought on with broken controls, guiding their ships into enemy cruisers with laughter on their lips. Tales of entire villages that resisted for weeks without weapons, using only traps and courage. The galaxy began to call humanity a paradox. Fragile yet unbreakable, weak yet unstoppable. A species that should not have survived, yet somehow always did. To fight them was to fight the impossible. Humanity, for its part, never forgot what the galaxy had done. They remembered the burned cities, the lost families, the millions who had died in the first strikes. That memory burned like fire in every heart, driving them forward. Even as they pushed further into alien space, they carried their grief with them, turning it into strength. On Ancon, Earth leaders spoke not just of survival, but of justice. They declared that humanity would never again live at the mercy of the galaxy. They would fight until every empire understood the cost of attacking them. It was no longer a question of defense. It was destiny. The galaxy had thought to end humanity's story before it began. Instead, they had written the first chapter of something greater. Humanity was no longer seen as prey. They were predators walking among predators, and the galaxy was beginning to fear what that meant. Alien rulers in private admitted the truth they would never say aloud. The war could not be won. Humanity could not be crushed. And every day, the war continued. Humanity only grew stronger. The galaxy had tried to defeat humanity. But what they had truly done was create their greatest rival. And soon, the galaxy would face a question it had never dared to ask before. What would humanity do once victory was within their grasp? The galaxy had hoped humanity would break, but by now, the truth was clear. It was no longer a war of extermination. It was a war of survival, and it was the galaxy itself that was fighting to survive. Alien fleets that once numbered in the thousands now limped across the stars in fragments. Factories that had fueled their empires for centuries lay silent, destroyed by human raids. Soldiers who once marched proudly now spoke in whispers, fearing the very name human. The galaxy had tried to destroy Earth, but in doing so, it had created something it could never undo. Humanity had become more than a single species defending its home. It had become a storm. The final turning point came during the Battle of Varian Prime, the capital world of one of the oldest empires. The aliens believed no one could ever breach its defenses. Dozens of fleets guarded it, its sky filled with weapons, its ground covered in fortresses. It had stood for 10,000 years against every threat. But when human fleets arrived, they did not hesitate. The battle raged for days. Alien admirals screamed orders, throwing ship after ship into the fight. But the humans came in waves, relentless, fearless, as though death itself had no hold on them. Where alien fleets broke, human fleets pressed harder. Where defenses held, humans found cracks. And when the skies above Varian Prime finally burned, the galaxy knew that its age of dominance was over. Humanity did not destroy the capital world. They could have. Their ships had breached its skies, their soldiers had landed on its surface, and its rulers were at their mercy. But instead, humanity did something the galaxy never expected. They stopped, on every channel, across every star. Humanity broadcast a single message. We are not your slaves. We are not your prey. We are not your experiment. We are human. You came to erase us, and you failed. From this day, if you come with war, you will find only war. But if you come with peace, you will find allies. The choice is yours. For the first time in history, the galaxy listened. The war ended not with surrender, but with silence. No empire dared to continue. No ruler dared to speak of extermination again. The cost was too high, the fear too deep. Humanity had shown them something they had never seen before. A species that could not be broken, a will that could not be bent, and a fire that burned brighter the more it was attacked. On Earth, people looked to the sky and saw not just danger, but destiny. Their world was scarred, their cities rebuilt from rubble, but their spirit was unshaken. They had stood against the galaxy and endured. And in doing so, they had earned a place among the stars that no empire could deny. For the galaxy, the lesson was clear. They had tried to wage war on humanity, believing it would end quickly. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than armies or fleets. They had awakened humanity's unity, resilience, and will to rise in the halls of alien rulers. One phrase spread quietly but with fear and respect. Do not provoke the Death Worlders. For humanity had claimed its title, not as victims, not as prey, but as a force the galaxy could never again ignore. The war that began as extermination ended as transformation. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, not as the weakest, but as the most feared. The galaxy had tried to defeat humanity. And in the end, the galaxy regretted everything.